Have you ever been judged before you even tried to change? Have you ever carried a label that was too heavy for a life that had barely begun? The truth is that the world has a bad habit of condemning entire stories because of a single chapter. And that's exactly what happened to him. They called him a criminal, so he decided to be a legend with his words. This is not just a catchphrase. It is the starting point of one of the most impactful turning points in contemporary culture, and one that may have much more to do with your life than it seems. Jay-Z, before he was a visionary billionaire and one of the most powerful names in the music industry, was just a kid from Brooklyn trying to make it. There were no accolades, no contracts, no studios in the beginning, just the hardships of the streets, the tough choices, and the constant feeling that no one expected him to make it. But somewhere along the line, when everything still seemed dark, he decided that he would not be defined by what the world said about him. That decision wasn't public. It wasn't made loudly. It was silent, invisible. And that's what changed everything. What you're about to discover may surprise you, because this story goes far beyond material success. It talks about mindset transformation, about the courage to make decisions that no one sees, but that rewrite destinies. It talks about overcoming adversity, about life transformation, about that internal turning point that happens when pain turns into fuel. And if you've ever felt like you're stuck in a narrative you didn't choose, this video is for you. Here, every story is a spark. Every video is a safe space to remember who you are, even when the world tries to make you forget. Jay-Z might have believed that this was his final destination, but something inside him told him otherwise, that there was another way. And maybe you feel that way now too, even if everything around you tells you otherwise. Stay with me until the end, because this isn't just a celebrity biography. It's a mirror. And maybe, somewhere along the way, you'll see yourself. Maybe you'll remember who you were before the world shaped you. Maybe you'll feel like you want to make decisions for yourself like he did. And it is at this moment that everything starts to change. Because when we understand that invisible decisions shape visible destinies, something inside us awakens. And maybe it's awakening in you now. An annoyance, a memory, or just that little voice saying, you can do it too. And if this makes sense to you, if any part of this story touched you, leave here in the comments what struck you the most. It could be a phrase, a feeling, a memory that came back. Your voice here matters. It really does. It is with each comment, each exchange, that this space becomes more than a channel. It becomes a movement. When you comment, share, like, you not only help me understand that this content is reaching where it needs to, you also help YouTube deliver this video to other people who, perhaps right now, need to hear this message. Sometimes, it's one click that changes everything. And if you feel that this kind of story needs to continue to exist, subscribe to the channel, because this isn't just about this video. It's about creating a place where we can remember, together, that there's still time, that no one needs to be defined by the worst they've ever experienced, and that there's always a next chapter, even when everything seems to be over. But there is still more to this journey. What comes next is the exact point where everything started to turn inside out. Because before any stage, spotlight, or magazine cover, there was a boy trying to hold himself together in a world that was falling apart around him. Jay-Z grew up in Marcy Projects, a housing project in Brooklyn marked by neglect, violence, and the absence of any real possibility for a future. It was the kind of place where time seemed to be running against you, where life was a silent race between surviving or disappearing. The reality there did not allow for pauses. The sound of gunshots was more common than the sound of hope. And when the options are reduced to starving or joining the game, the choice ceases to be a choice. Jay-Z joined, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. And this, as uncomfortable as it may seem to those who see it from the outside, is the hidden truth behind many journeys that the world applauds only after they become successful. He carried notebooks full of rhymes and thoughts that no one read, dreams that no one validated, and a hunger that wasn't just for food, but for getting out of there, for having control over his own narrative. But the market didn't want to know about a kid from Brooklyn with no record label, no contacts, no good resume. Doors closed one after the other. The no's came with the weight of a system that doesn't see value where there is pain. And this is where the most sensitive point of this journey lies. Rock bottom is not just the external environment. It is when you start to believe that maybe others are right, that maybe all of this is the best you will ever achieve, that your talents have no place, that you have been forgotten. This is the part that no one sees in documentaries, behind the scenes of achievements, in biographies full of happy endings. But even immersed in this reality, Jay-Z held on tightly to the only thing that was still his words. He wrote in silence. While the world labeled him a lost cause, he created verses as if he were leaving invisible maps to a way out that no one believed existed. And perhaps that is what is most impressive about his career. It wasn't just his talent. It was his persistence in listening to himself even when no one else was listening. This kind of mindset of continuing to create, even in the dark, is what separates those who collapse from those who reinvent themselves. It's not about not feeling pain. It's about what you do with it. And at this point in his journey, Jay-Z was still barely a shadow of the empire he would go on to build. But deep inside him, there was a silent conviction that this wasn't the end, it was the break. And breaks are part of the show. Comment here. I'm on this journey too. If at any point in your life you have ever felt like you were on the outside, trying to prove to yourself that you deserve to be on the inside. Because the next turning point begins exactly in this kind of silence. There's something very powerful that happens when a person stops waiting for permission. When they truly understand that they don't need approval to exist powerfully. Jay-Z got to this point after a series of closed doors, after seeing his tapes ignored by executives who wouldn't even listen to the end. The music industry didn't want to take a chance on him, not because he didn't have talent, but because he didn't fit the formula. He wasn't moldable. He wasn't convenient. And that's when he realized a truth that many people take a lifetime to discover. If the system doesn't see you, there's no point in shouting. You have to create your own stage. That decision made in silence, without an audience, without lights, without likes, was the turning point. That moment that no one records, but that carries all the strength of a new life about to be born. It was in that invisible space, between rejection and faith, that Rockefeller Records was born. It wasn't just an independent label. It was a symbolic gesture, an internal warning. I believe in myself, even when no one else does. That's the essence of transformation. It's not about beating the system. It's about no longer being held hostage by it. The impact of this decision goes beyond the music industry. It's about mindset. About breaking away from the logic that you need someone to validate you. Because if you need to be chosen to get started, you might never get started. And Jay-Z understood this. He traded the desire to be accepted for the decision to build. No spotlight, no structure, just conviction and urgency. He turned the key from the inside out, and that changed everything. Behind the scenes of this gesture, there was more than strategy. There was pain, pride, identity, and an overflowing hunger for autonomy. Creating your own label was like striking a match inside a dark tunnel. The light was still dim, but now there was a way. And maybe what you need today is no longer a yes from the world, but your own yes. That invisible decision that no one understands right away, but that repositions you from within. The hidden truth behind these great comebacks is that they almost always come from quiet places. No audience, no applause, Just you and the choice to keep going, even when you're scared, even when you don't have a map, even when you don't have a guarantee. This isn't about grandiosity. It's about everyday courage. And if you've ever found yourself thinking that maybe you need to stop waiting, this could be your moment. Write it down. That makes sense to me if this part of the story resonated with something you're experiencing or something you feel you need to do. Because the next step in this journey shows what happens when the world finally starts to pay attention. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because when an invisible decision holds firm long enough, it starts to become impossible to ignore. At first, everything seemed small. A makeshift studio, productions made on a shoestring budget, bold strategies that went against the industry playbook. But what no one could have predicted was the power of consistency. The quiet conviction that came from within began to echo in the streets. And when the streets listen, sooner or later, the rest of the world needs to listen too. Jay-Z didn't explode overnight. He built it, brick by brick, verse by verse, audience by audience. People who didn't know his name before started repeating his lyrics. Those who rejected him started paying attention. And the industry, which had closed so many doors, started to come running after him. But now it was different. He wasn't asking for space anymore. He was choosing who to share the territory he built with his own hands. And that's one of the biggest impacts of a real transformation. You don't just change your life. You change the world's relationship with you. Recognition did come, yes, but not as a point of arrival. It came as confirmation of a truth that he had already understood back then, when no one else could see it. He was not just a talented artist. He was a visionary mind, a strategist, a businessman. A name that came to mean authority, success, and most importantly, autonomy. Jay-Z became synonymous with power. But not the kind of power that screams, the kind of power that sustains, that chooses, that does not bow down. The phrase that marked this moment says a lot about the mentality he built. I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman. It's not about having a career. It's about being the structure, being the brand, being the movement. This is the invisible turning point becoming visible. When what was just an idea becomes a reference. When what was just survival becomes a legacy. And this, more than inspiring, is strategic. Because it shows that true success is not when the world validates you. It's when you already know who you are. And the world finally understands that. And perhaps the most powerful part of all this is realizing that this kind of journey isn't reserved for famous people. It starts with each person who decides to stop waiting to be chosen and starts choosing themselves. Who stops chasing space and starts creating their own. Who understands that visible impact only happens after invisible transformation. Jay-Z was no exception. He was just someone who decided to go all the way with what he believed in, even when it seemed crazy. Comment here. I am my own movement. If you felt that this truth also applies to you. Because there is still a detail of this story that few people know, and that reveals the type of mentality that sustains all of this to this day. And you? Are you going to wait for someone to believe? Or are you going to create your own chance? Because maybe this whole story has stirred something inside you. Maybe you're now remembering a dream you put aside, an idea that seemed too good to work, or a time when you believed in yourself more, before so many no's, before so much doubt, before so much comparison. Maybe right now, you're exactly where Jay-Z was before everything changed. With few resources, little structure, little visibility, but with something that no one can take away, the possibility of making decisions. The difference between someone who changes the world and someone who lives trapped in it is an invisible decision. This decision doesn't come with a soundtrack. It doesn't come with applause. It happens in a silent room, in the early hours of the morning when no one is watching, in a moment of exhaustion when you choose to keep going. And maybe you're living this moment right now, wondering if it still makes sense to insist, if it's worth trying again, if anyone will notice. And I tell you with all sincerity, this change begins long before the world realizes. It begins when you stop looking for answers outside and start listening to yourself again. How many times have you given up on your own plans because someone said they wouldn't work? How many doors have you seen closing and thought the problem was you? How many times have you compared yourself to those who have already made it and forgotten that everyone starts from scratch? There's no formula. There's no shortcut. But there is one thing in common in all the stories of those who did things differently. At some point, these people stopped asking for permission. And I'm not talking about giving up everything. I'm talking about starting from within. About making a deal with yourself. About deciding that you don't need an audience to take the first step. And that, even if it takes time, even if no one understands it now, the construction that comes from the truth has another strength, another root, another impact. It's not about proving anything to anyone. It's about you living what makes sense. With courage, with intention, with respect for your own story. What have you been keeping inside that you haven't shown the world yet? What decision have you been putting off because you think it's not the right time? What voice have you been trying to silence because you're afraid of seeming weaker, too dreamy, or out of place? Maybe today is the day that voice will finally be heard. Not by others, but by you. Because if there's one thing this journey teaches you, it's that the turning point never begins with applause. It begins in silence. With a small but firm choice. With a yes said to yourself, even when the world still has doubts. And if this video has reached you now, maybe it's because in some way you needed this reminder that there's still time, that you can still do it, and that there's something inside you that deserves to be built even if no one else understands it yet. What will yours be? If this story moved you in any way, if at any point you saw yourself in it, comment below. My time has come. It's the simplest way to show me that you were with me until the end, and more importantly, to record this commitment to yourself. If this video made sense to you, please leave a like. This really helps to keep this space alive where we can continue to exchange ideas that really make a difference. And if you want to continue accessing content like this, which doesn't just provide information, but real connection, subscribe to the channel. This is where we make space to reflect, strengthen ourselves, and most importantly, remember what really matters. There is a video here on the side that complements this subject. Click and continue with me there. Because the next story will move you in a different way.